you ever felt helpless? Like you're faced with a daunting obstacle? In a situation where you feel like, I wish someone could just help me to bridge this gap. Like, you know, when you're standing in the tube station and it says, mind the gap. Yeah. Sometimes it's a small gap and like someone made a joke of this, and sometimes it's like this Grand Canyon. It's like, how am I ever going to cross this gap? But as we will see today, that is what, let me see if I can swipe on this thing. Yeah. That's what friends are for, is to help us to cross the gap. These are army ants. And in Central America, yeah, we actually saw some of them when we were at the conference in Panama. They are quite amazing. They build bridges. And this is just a tiny little one, just to give you some idea. They build bridges over water, like 1 meter, 2 meter streams, between trees. I've seen one that's like a hanging bridge that's like probably a meter long. It is quite amazing. Where any one of them is like, how am I ever going to bridge this gap? But when the friends come together, it becomes possible. And so the topic today is I want to talk about just one point, which is intercession. Who knows the word intercession? Who's familiar with it? Okay, so it's a new word. Okay, that's great. Don't worry, it will all be explained from the dictionary, so it will become clear what this word means. It is Relationships Month, and it actually fits quite well. The whole idea of bridging the gap and helping each other to do that. So let's get into Acts 12, from verse 1, where Peter is faced with this kind of situation, where he is helpless. He has a huge chasm in front of him. And we pick it up in Acts 12, verse 1. It says, it was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with a sword. When he saw that this met with approval among the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. Verse 5, so Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. And this is a key verse here. Here is Peter all on his own in prison, surrounded by, how's your maths? How many soldiers? 16 soldiers, 4 squads of 4 each. His best friend, another apostle, James, was just executed, head chopped off. And he must be thinking, what's next for me? How do I get out of this? Out of this prison? How do I get out of this situation? In the meantime, the church was praying earnestly to God for him. So verse 6, the night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers. Well, he was clearly at peace with God, not having sleepless nights about his dilemma. He was sleeping, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. Quick, get up, he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. Then the angel said to him, put on your clothes and sandals, and Peter did so. Wrap your cloak round you and follow me, the angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea that what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision. They passed the first and second guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left him. I can imagine that Peter must be thinking like, is this a dream? Is this real? Am I awake? How do you know? Pinch yourself like, no, this must be a dream. I mean, I'm in a prison surrounded by 16 soldiers, in chains with locked gates. I must be dreaming. And so, in verse 11, it says, Then Peter came to himself and said, Now I know without a doubt that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches, and from everything the Jewish people were hoping would happen. When this had dawned on him, so at this point he realizes, wow, okay, I'm not dreaming, it's real. Right. I'm actually outside the prison on the streets. So what does he do? He went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying, as we saw in verse 5. The whole church was earnestly praying for him. So while they're still praying, he shows up at the door. Verse 13. Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed, she ran back without opening it and exclaimed, Peter is at the door. I can imagine poor Peter, please let me in. I know how the shoulders on my heels. And then she just runs away like, what? Just open the door. So she's so excited. So verse 15, you're out of your mind, they told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said, it must be his angel. So angels all over the place. That's another lesson for another day. Verse 16, but Peter kept on knocking. And when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Lord had brought him out of prison. Tell James and the other brothers and sisters about this, he said, and then he left for another place. In the morning there was no small commotion among the soldiers as to what had become of Peter. After Herod had a thorough search made for him and did not find him, he cross-examined the guards and ordered that they be executed. Well, this is quite an amazing story. There's a lot of lessons in this, but the key lesson is these two verses. In verse 5, the whole church was earnestly praying to God for him. And in verse 12, many people had gathered and were praying. This is where this word intercession or to intercede comes in. The whole church was interceding for Peter. And what this word means is to go in between. It is to intercede on behalf of someone else. So, for example, synonyms of that would be to mediate or to act as an intermediary, to be a broker for someone, to intervene, to step in or to step into the gap, to take action for someone, to plead on the behalf of someone. And it literally comes from the 16th century French and Latin intercedere, which means in between, or inter, between, and cedere, to go. So to go in between. When someone needs you to step in the gap and go in between him and what the situation is. Now we can intercede physically for someone and rescue them from a situation. So listen to a sound clip this week. It was quite funny. The kids all out. Rosie's here. Won't be a good lesson for now, just teasing. Just teasing. Play the sound clip of this boy. He's, I would guess he's maybe 6, 7, 8 years old. He calls emergency services. And this lady picks up and says, hello, what's your emergency? And he says, my mom's coming home, and she said, I must finish my homework when she comes. And I've got fractions to do, and I can't do fractions. It's an emergency. So this lady was very kind, and she said, oh, what's your problem? And he said, I can't add 1/4 plus 3/4. And she's very kind, and she helped him, and she explained to him how the fractions work, and they said, oh, you saved me. Now I'm not in trouble anymore. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry that I had to call you, but it really was an emergency. And she was very kind. She said, yeah, I'm really glad to help. You know, it's you're welcome to call again if you get stuck, but really ask your teacher first or ask a friend. But you could hear the relief in his voice when he was stuck and someone else came to his rescue. Someone else practically just helped him. But there's more to it than this in the Bible. Because what we see here is that the disciples didn't practically do anything. They just prayed. And this whole idea of spiritually stepping in between, coming in between, appealing to God on behalf of someone else, we find throughout the Bible. Now, who can think of someone or some situations in the Bible where someone interceded for someone else with God? Everybody think of some examples. Other than this one, I mean, we've just read this one. Yes?
It was the prophet Nathan and David, and David doesn't realise that he's in the terrible place, and Nathan kind of tells him a story and tells him off.
Right.
Intercedes between him and God, effectively.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, actually, he asks Nathan to please pray for God to forgive me, which he did. That's intercession, yes. Any other thoughts?
Jesus with Peter, kind of, because he says, I prayed for you that your faith may not fail.
Exactly, yeah. Interceding for you. Actually, if you read through the Bible with this perspective and think about it, the Bible is littered. It is like those who intercede for others writes history in the Bible. If we just go through a list of some examples, Moses intercedes 3 times for Israel. In fact, there's one, when they're on the edge of the promised land and they rebel, God says, okay, Moses, I'm going to destroy all of them, and you and a select few can go into the promised land. And Moses intercedes and he says, God, please, just send me into the desert, but spare your nation. He interceded for the whole nation of Israel. And not just once, but 3 times. Moses interceded for Miriam. Samuel interceded for the whole nation of Israel. There's a nameless, in 1 Kings 13, verse 6, there's a nameless man of God who intercedes for King Jeroboam. David interceded for the whole of Israel in Chronicles. In Daniel interceded for Jerusalem. He had this vision and he said, God, remember your prophecy. Please spare Jerusalem and open the door so we can go back there. Esther, when the whole nation of Israel was faced, the Jews were faced with destruction, she sends a message and says, please fast for me. So she actually asks for intercession, and then she intercedes by going to see the king and try and get the law changed to save Israel. And we can go on and on and on and on. There's so many examples. Almost all of the prophets, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, all of them interceded. They were not just messengers from God to Israel, but they were also messengers from the people to God. When the people were not speaking up for themselves, the prophets saw the need and they went to God and said, God, please do something. Please change something. There's nothing I can do. We need you. And that is spiritual intercession. Now these are all great prophets and everything, but this story we read in Acts is basically just the church interceding. Nameless people, average disciples like you and I. And we can learn from that of what role can we play in our relationships with each other to intercede for each other with God. Sometimes we face situations where you feel like a brother or sister comes to you and you think like, sometimes you feel like, oh, I can help out, I can give you some advice, I can do something for you. Sometimes you're like him, I don't know, I'll pray for you. And sometimes it's not, it's not these, oh, I'm feeling a little bit sick, okay, I'll pray for you to get better kind of prayers, but more like in, I really don't know what to do kind of prayers. Where it needs people to move God's heart to do amazing things. And that is something, if we think about it, it's like, wow, isn't that amazing to move the heart of the creator of the universe, to change his plans, to do something different than what was going to happen. That is the power of intercession, the power of interceding on behalf of someone else. Let's go to Genesis 18, verse 16. And Abraham is not on that list, but this is one of the most extensive examples of intercession in the Bible. And we're going to learn some practicals from Abraham about So, how do we, Genesis 18:1-8, verse 16. Learn some practicals from Abraham about how can we intercede. What does that look like when we intercede with God for someone else? So the context here is God sends 2 angels to Abraham to tell him that God is going to destroy these 2 cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Abraham's cousin Lot lives with his family. Somehow Abraham's heart is touched by this, even though he knew how evil those cities were. And when he hears this message, he thinks like, I've got to do something. But what can I do? Am I going to stand between God and destroying the city? I mean, like, you'll just be destroyed with it. There's no way that's going to happen. So let's see what Abraham did. In verse 16 of Genesis 18. It says, when the men, that's the 2 angels who brought him the message, when they got up to leave, they looked down towards Sodom, and Abraham walked along with them to see them on their way. In verse, I'm just going to skip over for sake of time, not read all the verses. In verse 19, let's skip over to verse 20. Then the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great, and their sin is so grievous. And then God says that I'm going to destroy these 2 cities. So Abraham's heart is moved. And we pick it up in verse 23. It says, then Abraham approached him and said, will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? So Abraham goes to God and says, God, are you really going to destroy this whole city? And he starts reasoning with God. He intercedes for them and says, God, could I possibly change your mind to do something different? And he starts off and he says, what if there's just 50 people, 50 good people in the city? In verse 25 he says to God, far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked, treating the righteous and the wicked alike. Far be it from you. Will not the judge of all the earth do right? Verse 26, the Lord said, if I find 50 righteous people in the city of Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. That's amazing. Abraham already moved God's heart. He interceded for the city. But then Abraham probably knew that the picture wasn't that bright for Sodom. He sort of started his offer high, but he knew that 50 righteous people in that city, I don't think so. So he goes back to God and he starts negotiating. And he said, what if there's 45? And God says, okay, if there's 45, I will not destroy it. And then he goes down to 40 and 30 and 20. And then he goes back a last time and he said, just once more, God. What if only 10 can be found there? And God answered him and he said, for the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. This is an amazing story where Abraham's heart is moved, and because his heart is moved, he moves God's heart. And he not only moves God's heart once, but he keeps on shifting it along from 50 righteous people to eventually just 10. To intercede to save the city. Now, unfortunately, sometimes it's too late. And there's a time where we're all going to end up at the gates with Peter, or whatever your vision is of how that day is going to be. And this guy shows up and he says, any chance of a plea bargain? Which is a legal term when you make a deal with the prosecution so you don't go to jail. At some point it's too late. And unfortunately, even though God agreed, I will not destroy the city, it was too late for Sodom and Gomorrah. There was not even 10 righteous people. There were 8, I think, was it? It's Lot and his wife and his 3 sons and their wives. Something like that, yeah. So anyway, it's less than 10. And the cities were destroyed, nevertheless. But God was willing, except they didn't quite meet the criteria. Sometimes it's too late. So interceding doesn't guarantee the outcome. God is still sovereign. God is not like the gods of the Romans, where if you bring enough sacrifices, you will please the gods and they will do as you tell them to do. Intercession is not like that. It's not us telling God what to do, but it is pleading with God to move his heart. And if it's not too late, or it's not beyond his decision that's already made, then God can make changes, like saving Peter from a jail. So, spiritual intercession is interceding with God in prayer for someone else so that God will intercede in their lives. And that's a pattern we see throughout the Bible. Sometimes God changes things, and sometimes he doesn't. King Hezekiah was going to die. The prophet interceded for him, and his life was extended by, I think it was 10 or 20 years or something. Was it? Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. It's something like that. I didn't actually check my facts. But anyway, his life was extended after intercession. That is the effect of intercession, the power of intercession for other people's lives. So let's review the story of Abraham quickly and see what can we learn from this. First of all, there is boldness. Abraham approached God and said, "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" I mean, that's quite audacious, you can almost say. You know, when God has already decided something, to say, "Oh, hang on, God, I know you, God, the almighty creator of the universe. You have all wisdom, the God of all righteousness. You've warned these people so many times, you've sent them prophets, but can I say something here? Can you?" I mean, that's bold. That's very bold. Abraham had this boldness. Intercession sometimes needs boldness. To say, "Dare I pray this prayer?" And the examples we see in the Bible is, yes, we do dare pray the prayer. The second thing we see from him is pleading. He pleads with God. He says, "But God, what if there's just 50 righteous people?" That's a plea. "God, please, can you save them? Is there some way in which you can work this out?" The third thing is reasoning with God. And that's quite amazing. He appeals to God's own character. He says, "God, far be it from you to do such a thing, to kill the righteous with the wicked." It's like, "God, I mean, you're a good God." He appealed to God's conscience, if you could call it that. I'm not sure if God has a conscience, being perfectly holy and righteous. Someone can enlighten me on that one. I'll appreciate that. So, yes, that's one of those questions that's beyond me. I'm like, I don't know. But certainly he appealed to God's character and his integrity. Integrity is acting in accordance with your values and your beliefs. And he appeals to God's integrity. He says, "God, but you're a loving, righteous, you won't kill the good ones with the bad ones." And God listened, because he saved Lot and his family. Moses did the same thing when he prayed for Israel. He said, "God, you just rescued this nation from Egypt. If you now destroy them, Egypt's going to laugh at you, and they're going to mock you." And God was like, "Okay, good point." So, it's amazing that we can reason with God if we really think about his character, his integrity, and remind him of his promises. Not that he forgets, but I think he likes that when we remind him, because it shows him that we have it on our hearts as well. So he reasoned with God. Very important, Abraham came with humility. In verse 27 he says, "God, I know I've been so bold as to speak to you, but though I am nothing but dust and ashes." It's helpful to remember that. It's like, I am speaking to God here, and who am I? I'm just nothing. I'm just one of 7 billion humans on this planet. To approach with humility. And then lastly, he interceded with perseverance. In fact, in verse 22 he says, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak just once more. What if only 10 can be found there?" So he started with 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, 10. 6 times he went back. Sometimes intercession takes perseverance to go back again and ask again. I say, God, please, again. Sometimes it takes perseverance over a long time. I'm just thinking of Liesel's mum, who's been studying the Bible for a few months now. We've been disciples for almost 25 years now. In fact, it's 25 years. January is 25 years. Her mum came to church with us the first time in the first few weeks after we were baptized, 25 years ago. And she came a few times, and then for a long time there was a lot of resistance, no interest, and doesn't really want to talk about it, doesn't want to study the Bible or anything. After 25 years now, she's studying the Bible, she wants to be baptized, and hopefully in May when Liesel goes to South Africa, she can have the privilege of baptizing her mom. These things happen with perseverance in prayer. And if we look back, I think like, what have we actually done? It's like, well, nothing really except pray. There's nothing different or more that we did, or Liesel did, that's special, that stands out. That's like, wow, she did that, and then her mum decided, okay, wow, okay, I think it's time. It's like, you step back and think like, what have I actually done? Nothing. It's just her heart changed like that. It's just a response to prayer. My brother was baptized a year and a half ago, also in Pretoria. Same thing. I invited him to church a few weeks after I was baptized. I had 1 or 2 conversations to him. Big time resistance, not interested. Been praying for him over the years, sometimes giving up, sometimes stopping, sometimes not praying at all, then praying again. And then one day, completely unexpected, I get a phone call from him saying, eventually called me and said, when are you coming to South Africa again? I said, oh no, only in 9 months' time. He said, oh, that's a pity, that's too long because I want you to come and baptize me. I'm like, what? And then we started studying the Bible. I said, oh, I have to baptize you, but it's not that simple. And then we started studying the Bible and eventually got baptized there. But I'm like, what did I do? I did nothing except pray. And pray with perseverance. And pray with not giving. There are other things which I'm praying for, which I've given up sometimes. I think like, hang on, I haven't prayed about that for a long time. I'm not persevering anymore. So, these are some qualities of intercession that we can learn from Abraham. To intercede with boldness, with pleading, with reasoning with God, with humility, and with perseverance. And if I apply this to myself, these are good questions I ask myself. I said, when I intercede in prayer, do I just ask, or do I really plead with God? And there's a difference. So, someone says, oh, I'm feeling a bit sick, will you pray for me? I ask. But if there's a big need, then sometimes I also just ask. Do I reason with God? Appealing to His promises, His integrity, appealing to His character, to His love, to His covenant? Do I demand, or do I approach God with humility and in submission? Do I persevere? Does God see how serious I am by my perseverance? On the other side of this, if you're faced with a gap, a big gap, an obstacle, a problem, if you're stuck, it is good to express your need. Paul did not hesitate. I mean, he was an apostle. God spoke to him directly. Jesus appeared to him. Yet, he had the humility to express his need. Just 2 examples. In Colossians 4 verse 3. He says, at the same time, pray for us too. That's meaning him and his traveling companion. That God may open a door to us for the word, to speak to the mystery of Christ, for which I am in prison. He realized, like Peter, I'm stuck in prison. What can I do? I can ask for prayers. He expressed his need. The same in Romans 15 verse 30. He says, join me in the struggle by your prayers to God on my behalf. Sometimes you feel like, I'm praying, but please join me because I need your prayers on my behalf. I need your intercession. I need you to step in the gap for me with God. So that's intercession. Do we all understand this word intercession now?
Mm.
It's clear. It's a valuable word for a disciple to know. So, how can we apply this to ourselves? Do I have the humility to make my needs known? It's a humbling thing sometimes to be open and vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm stuck. Please pray for me for this. Here's another one. It's the issue of faith. Am I astonished when God intervenes? Like the people who were praying for Peter. God, please, Almighty, were praying. Then Peter knocks at the door, and the girl says, Peter is here. And like him, nah, can't be. And then he walks in, and they were astonished. It's like him, they should have gone, of course, Peter, we've been praying for you. It's funny how sometimes when God answers our prayers, we're astonished. It's like him, well, why are you astonished? I'm like that. I was astonished when my brother called me. I was like, no, this is unreal. It's like, okay, I'm sure God looked at me and said, oh, ye of little faith. What have you been praying about then all these years? I mean, you ask me to intervene, and when I do it, you go, oh, how did this happen? Who am I interceding for? This is all about relationships. It is about us stepping into the gap for each other. Am I interceding for others? Am I taking it seriously? There was a time when I realized I so glibly and easily say to people, I'll pray for you, I'll pray for you. People say, oh, pray for me for this. Yeah, I'll pray for you. 10 minutes later, I've already forgotten it. But I start making notes. When I say I'll pray for someone, I try and make a note so I actually won't forget and will actually do it. So that when someone asks for intercession, like this morning on the way to church, we were praying in the car, and I realized, oh, someone asked me for yesterday already to pray for quite a serious thing with his relationship with his son, where they're not talking to each other at the moment. And I said I'll pray for him, and that was 2 days ago already, and I still haven't prayed for him. To intercede is a serious business, and I think, yeah, I really need to take it more seriously as well. Is it something for only the prophets? No, it's for all of us as disciples, for every disciple. In fact, we are called in Timothy 2 verse 1, 1 Timothy 2 verse 1. He says, I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people. It's interesting how it's distinguished from, there's a difference between petitioning, between praying, between thanksgiving, and intercession. It's like it's a special kind of prayer. Different from just asking, different from just petitioning, different from just praying. It's the kind of prayer that really appeals to God, that really sees the need. And say, God, we need something special here. We need you. To finish off for some thoughts on communion, we thought about some Old Testament examples, but like Malcolm said, Jesus interceded as well. He interceded for Peter, and then, but he's also still interceding for us. He interceded for us on the cross, but in Hebrews 7 verse 25 it says, therefore, he, talking about Jesus, is able to save completely those who come to God through him, because he always lives to intercede for them. Jesus is still interceding. Yes, he interceded when he was on earth, many times, with the adulterous woman. He interceded. He said, who will pick up the first stone? Save their life. He interceded for his disciples in John 17, a whole chapter. He says, my prayer is for them. He interceded with the blind man by healing him. He interceded at the wedding in Cana, turning water into wine. With the paralytic, with everybody that he healed was really an intercession. He interceded even in his last moments on the cross when he prayed, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they're doing. His intercession is what saved me from my sins, what gave me salvation. And if you're a disciple, that's what he did for you. But he's still doing that. He's still doing that for everybody who wants to come to him and say, Jesus, please, I'm stuck. I need your help. Please intercede for me. Please save me. And he still intercedes. And I'm sure he still intercedes in prayer, where he sort of just leans over to Dad and says, Dad, please help over there. When we have communion now, let's think about that. Let's think about in what ways Jesus has interceded in our lives. The big way, of course, interceding on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins so that we can be saved. Let's break the bread and the wine. Dear God and Heavenly Father, God, it is always amazing to me that we can even pray to you, God, Father, and to know that you can do amazing things, Father. You can move mountains, Father, and you're willing to move mountains just in answer to our prayers, God. Father, we thank you and praise you for that, God. Thank you, God, for interceding for us, God, by sending your own Son to die on the cross, to pay the price for our sins. And Jesus, thank you for interceding for us in that act of the crucifixion. Father, thank you for the body that was broken for us and the blood that was spilled for us. Please forgive us our sins. And please bless the bread we're about to have that represents that body and the fruit of the vine.